which is I feel has been a big key role in the success of all the programs. We did ask her to, we just asked her about 5 minutes ago if she would actually speak for a few minutes and give her farewells. She said she didn't have to, but I've always enjoyed having Julia with the organizations. She's always been an inspiration. And Julia, if you would please, we would love if you would say a few words.
Well, great. Thank you, Ben, and thank you, partners and the executive committee for just allowing me a few minutes just to say, I guess, goodbye or farewell. I'm not good at goodbyes, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say so long. But I do have an opportunity to move to the federal government here in Indiana, and I'll be serving as the state director for the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture Farm Service Agency. And I'm looking forward to finding ways where we can continue to work together. I think the intersection of agriculture and the environment and pollution prevention and the work that we all do truly intersects, and we all need to be at the table together. And so that's what I'm looking forward to. I also want to say thank you. Thank you for kind of bringing me into the fold over 5 years ago, allowing me to learn alongside you, allowing to learn with you, allowing me to ask those questions that I didn't quite understand, but you were also cordial and available in answering and educating me about pollution prevention. And I feel as I depart the agency tomorrow that I'm in such a better place in terms of a knowledge set that I did not have over 5 years ago. And I can be your cheerleader. I can be your champion on the outside, while at the same time trying to figure out ways that we can all work together. So to me, that's the exciting piece. I really want to applaud the partners group. Yes, we're doing today's meeting via Zoom, but I would say we were one of the first large organizations to figure out Zoom and to utilize that technology in the middle of the pandemic. And those are the golden nuggets that I guess we are taking from the pandemic that we're slowly recovering from. And as we kind of exit that phase of our lives, it's technologies like Zoom and Teams and other platforms that allow us to connect the entire state together without us all actually being in the same room together. And obviously, we all want to be together, but this really allows us to be able to continue to educate and inform, keep folks apprised of issues while maybe not having the travel costs and the time in a vehicle to travel to and from a meeting. So I would be remiss if I did not thank two of my IDEM colleagues, Jennifer Collins and Jean Fix, who are the brains, if you will, behind this organization in terms of keeping the tires on the bus, keeping things moving forward, really doing a yeoman's job of making sure that information is presented accurately and very organized. And really, I want to thank Jennifer and Jean from the bottom of my heart for allowing me every day to have an opportunity to work alongside them. Sid Paul is an intern on our staff, and so he's on as well as the many executive committee members of the partners group. Thank you for what you do, and let's figure out a way that agriculture can be at the table in these future discussions. And I know Jennifer and I've had those discussions, so we're trying to figure that out. So I guess as I close, I think we're all looking forward to spring arriving full time in Indiana. Getting little snippets of it, and we think it's here. But myself, like a lot of you, are just ready for spring to get here and stay and have some enjoyable weather to get out in the environment in. So thank you, Ben. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for always being the one to advocate for this organization, and really appreciate the leadership you, the executive committee, and our IDEM staff provide. So it's great to be a part of this, and I know Brian Rockensus, our commissioner, is looking forward to joining you a little bit later.
Well, Julia, thank you very much for your kind words, and you will be missed. But like you said, it's just farewell. Hopefully, we'll see you in September.
Yep, I'll plan to attend.
With one more thing, and Julie actually started this. I do want to thank Jennifer Collin and Gene Fix and Laura. And Kelly, there's been a lot of work behind the scenes that goes in these meetings, and those of you that use Zoom, you understand what it takes. And if it wasn't for the skills of a lot of folks, we would not be able to do this. I've teased Jennifer for about a year now that she's she's an executive producer half the time, and she does a wonderful job at it, and a director and a sounds and everything else. And thank you very much, and we really enjoy it, and we couldn't do it without everybody's help. So with that being said,
My pleasure.
oh, it's been wonderful. So let's go ahead with our first presentation. Kelly Weger from Purdue Manufacturing Extension Partnership. I'll go ahead and stop my video and mute, and it's all yours.
All right, thank you. I believe there was an intro video that we were going to play. Jennifer, is that correct? Or do you want me to just launch into
I'm going for it. Yeah, just a second here.
Do you know how much money your business spends on water, energy use, or waste disposal? Remember, you can't manage what you don't measure, and it could be costing you. Waste stream mapping can reveal substantial opportunities to reduce costs, improve production flow, save time, improve worker safety, reduce inventory, and improve environmental performance. These assessments take a broad look at manufacturing processes by focusing on all environmental areas, including water, air, solid waste, toxics, and energy. In 2020, IDEM and EPA partnered with the Purdue Manufacturing Extension Partnership to offer on-site and virtual technical assistance at a significantly reduced cost to Indiana manufacturers. Manufacturing facilities receive 16 hours of training and up to 40 hours of technical assistance from the program, and were eligible for seed funding to implement improvement projects.
This is a partnership that's been going on for a number of years. It's been really wonderful. We've worked together to collaborate and receive grants from the EPA. IDEM has been an awesome partner, and we've been really proud to be involved to help facilitate a lot of the different grant programs. Oftentimes people hear the word waste and they think we're just talking about solid waste. It's actually an acronym which stands for water, air, solid processing, and energy. Historically, if we think about just after the Industrial Revolution, businesses were only focused on the bottom line, which was profit. And what we've found over the decades and centuries is that the impact that they have negatively on the environment by ignoring it catches up with them. And it ends up being something that's even more costly to fix and remediate after the fact. So by being proactive and really looking for ways to improve and do pollution prevention up front, they not only have bigger positive benefit for the environment, but they also have positive benefit for them financially by not letting something get out of control.
The Purdue Manufacturing Extension Partnership has a long-standing history of providing high-value solutions to help Indiana businesses maximize their success. As advocates for Indiana's thousands of manufacturers, the Purdue staff identifies areas of improvement, streamlines processes, and ultimately increases competitiveness. The Purdue Partnership serves over 500 companies annually by implementing continuous improvement principles in the areas of productivity, growth, and technology.
At American Engineering, we manufacture restroom trailers, shower trailers, and other types of specialty portable sanitation trailers. We custom build every single trailer from the ground up. We've been in business since 1988 and have just around 30 employees. We really wanted to just become a better social company. We wanted to be better for our community, better for our environment and our people to work. So we decided to start looking into how we could improve our processes and reduce waste, and that brought us to the Waste Stream project. The biggest benefit for us for having Purdue come in and assess was that it was an outside voice that was an expert that had different ideas and different views. It really opened the eyes of people who had a specific thought of how things could work. Areas that we needed to address in our audit were waste of water that we used for flushing our system and checking the waste tanks, air pollution from spraying and coating the frames. We actually had a huge waste of drill bits, so that was an area that we found that we didn't realize we had. And then the waste of material for wood waste. The biggest idea, the biggest change for us is a new layout of the building and how we're going to coat the frames and then start the build production. That's going to be a totally new layout for us. We are going to add 3-phase power. That's going to allow us to buy some new equipment to do that change. Another one is the change of drill bits and hole saws. That was a huge savings, is an easy change for us. And then we've increased our recycling. I would absolutely suggest a waste audit to another company. It really opened our team members' eyes on how much waste we were creating that we didn't realize and how many improvements we could make.
For anybody, when you're day in, day out, mired in your own work environment, over time, you just stop seeing things. And, really a large part of what we do, we certainly come in with expertise, but it's not brain surgery. It's really having a fresh pair of eyes. We walk into a facility and we're able to identify stuff that the folks that are working there every day just walk past. They've since forgotten about it. Maybe somebody at some point brought it up, but it got lost in the shuffle, and we bring that stuff back to the forefront. You could always have a company come in and just do changes at your facility, but then it's not going to last. If people don't understand the why and the reasoning behind why these changes are being pursued, then it's not going to continue in the long run. So the training, we view that as a really essential part so that people can open their eyes, start to raise awareness, start to see potential other projects around their facility, because they now understand and can connect the dots between what it means to be sustainable and how that impacts them in their business and their daily roles within the company. I never know walking in what we're going to find. We've had projects where we just looked at their layout, and by implementing a new system that allowed basically a conveyor belt, they were able to completely eliminate folks that were just driving forklifts around constantly. And that, in that particular project, opened up enough floor space that increased their capacity. They were able to bring on a new client. They had another $1 million in sales. So the projects are kind of all over the board. But the thing that is consistent is every single one that I've worked with, we have annual cost savings. We have annual environmental impact. And in a lot of cases, there's also a benefit for the workers as well. I think for any business, it's really critical to think about, of course, their impact both on the environment, on the community that they live within. So pollution prevention is an essential part of that. I don't know how you could not be thinking about pollution prevention when you're in manufacturing.
To learn more about waste stream mapping in Indiana, visit on.in.gov/waste.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing that video. That was something that IDEM put together, and they did a fabulous job. I really appreciate them capturing so many insights from some of the clients that have gone through this training before. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started with a little bit more information about exactly what the waste stream mapping grant is. So some of this you might have picked up from the video, but just to make sure everybody's on the same page, I'll kind of introduce the topic a little bit more. So my name is Kelly Weeger. My background actually is as an architect. I specialized in sustainable design, practicing in Michigan for a number of years. About 9 years ago, I joined Purdue MEP and came down here to work with Purdue, and I've been managing our sustainability programs ever since. So if you're not familiar, Purdue MEP is the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, and every state actually has an MEP center. So here in Indiana, it happens to be housed under Purdue University. So we are a nonprofit center, and we provide all sorts of training and consulting for companies statewide. A portion of that is what I manage, which is sustainability, but we also have a very strong history in things like lean manufacturing, Six Sigma, quality, and leadership. So the program that we're going to share today has been in the works for a couple of years. It is funded originally by the EPA. So IDEM partnered with Purdue MEP, and we applied for the funding, and we were awarded the funding to do this program. So the program is based off of this core concept that Purdue MEP put together, which is called waste stream mapping. So for us, WASTE is an acronym that stands for Water, Air, Solids, Toxicity, and Energy. And the waste stream mapping program was rolled out to a number of companies. So a lot of different companies were eligible to apply. We had 51 applicants, and we had funding to award to 15 companies to participate. The companies actually were from a number of different industries. We had a pretty broad range of companies that had applied, and those that were selected are represented in this diagram here. So I'll talk not about all of them today, but I will just share some examples from each one. As far as who was selected, again, there was quite a range in terms of the scale of the companies. You can see the facilities themselves ranged from 25,000 square feet up to over 3 million square feet. And the number of employees ranged from 25 employees up to 950. So again, quite a diverse group of individuals that were going through the training. So the training itself, this is the outline of what we put forward. So it's a 2-day on-site training, and we split that up across 3 to 4 weeks. And when we go through that, the goal is to get folks trained on the tools itself, and then we start to conduct on-site work. So on day 1, we do a baseline assessment. We identify project areas based off of what we've learned in the training in the morning part of that session. And then they have several weeks to continue to collect the data so that we can have that ready for day 2 of training. By the end of day 2, we have identified and brainstormed solutions for some of those projects and begin moving forward with that. From that point, the companies are really doing the brunt of the work in terms of collecting the data, researching options, getting pricing information, and estimating what they expect to come, and ultimately implementing those projects. So from after the training is concluded, Purdue works with them to kind of check in, get updates, continue to provide resources to them, and assist them if as needed to move forward with their projects. And then ultimately, after they've implemented some of their projects, we collect final information and we report that data back to the EPA. The waste stream mapping training itself follows this approach. So first, we have to identify the scope that we're going to use for waste stream. When we go through the training itself, there's actually 3 different scope approaches. So once the company selects which one they want to move forward with, then we move on to collecting the data for the as-is waste stream. That would be all done on day 1 of the training. And then from there, we move into the improvement ideas and the future state or to-be state of what we're trying to get towards. And then we create an implementation plan, put some deadlines down, and work on actually implementing those changes. From there, as with a lot of other processes, like Plan, Do, Check, Act, it is a circular process. So once we've implemented the changes, we still want to track the data and make sure that we got the results that we want, or if there are any further adjustments or new information that we need to then fold back in and further refine the process for even better results. So a little more about waste stream mapping. So here's an example for a manufacturing facility. You can see that we are tracking for every single step in the process. What are the different types of inputs that go into that step, and what are the different outputs or wastes? And it can be, some of them are going to be fairly easy and obvious to identify. Some of them are a little bit tougher because it's, for example, broken tools. Over the year or so of operation, those things occur, but if we're just looking at it for a day, we're not necessarily going to observe or notice those. So we capture some of the wastes that are less obvious, as well as some of the ones that are more easy to spot. So here is an example of an overall system waste stream map. You can sort of see there that there's a black rectangle. So that's literally the 4 walls of the plant itself. Everything outside of that are things like suppliers that are bringing product into their facility, warehouse shipping, and ultimately end users that follow after the production of whatever it is that they're making. So we don't limit ourselves to just what's within the four walls. We also look for opportunities outside of the building itself, which does open up a whole nother realm of possibilities. So when we walk through the waste stream mapping training, the first thing we do is we identify what are the steps, what are the elements that we have in our processes internally. We identify then what those relationships are between them. So for example, in this case, you see that there's two simultaneous streams that are going in sequence, and then those come together when it gets to assembly. For each one of those, we then identify the various inputs and outputs that we want to track. We collect the data so that we know what our current state is and what kind of sense of scale. You know, that's a big thing I think that's valuable, is understanding where we see the most opportunity is not always where you think. It's not always the obvious stuff. Then we summarize that data. So I'm going to share several case studies with you, and then after I share a few of these, I will also introduce Bob Battle, who will be talking more about his experience. Their company is one of the participants that went through this program. So the first company here is a company that does assembly and kitting. You can see with the WASTE acronym, not every company is going to end up having projects in every single waste category. It just depends on the scope that they select. So for this company, they didn't have anything really valuable or worth pursuing for water, but for air, they created a new target to be net zero by 2030, which is a wonderful, aggressive goal. And they are also now pursuing green power options from AES. So both of those will cut down on their greenhouse gas emissions. Under the solids category, one of the things that they had a lot of was gloves, and they identified an opportunity to switch to compostable gloves. So that's one of the things that they're doing. They also have about 18,000 pounds of cardboard that was just being sent to the landfill. They've now identified a process and a taker for that to be recycled. They also modified their internal office procedures to avoid about 2,000 pounds per year of paper production that again was being sent to the landfill. And they have installed water filling stations so that they were able to avoid about 15,000 disposable plastic bottles that were previously being purchased for workers in their facility. So they're encouraging, some of these things are technologically based, some of them are behavioral, some are a combination. Of course, whenever you're talking about changing behavior, there's a lot more work going into not just educating people and getting them on board, but keeping them aware, keeping them on board, especially when we have turnover. So there's a lot of signage, training, et cetera, that has to go into play to keep that and sustain that win. On the energy side, this company also decided to install a new electric vehicle charger for employees to utilize when they are at work. So here's an example of one of the companies. As we do the training, we do this on site. The facility location where we do the training varies. It's all over the board. In this case, we have a very nice conference room. You can see at the back, there's a white, it's a mobile whiteboard that is on the wall. That's where we're doing some of our brainstorming sessions. We've also done this training in break rooms where we're getting disrupted every 40 minutes or so. And my most interesting one currently, which is actually where I will be tomorrow, is we are conducting training in an empty loading dock in a dairy facility, which has a train track that runs by very, very loudly about once an hour. So the training opportunities are there regardless of what kind of facilities you have. We just kind of roll with whatever we get when we get there. So here's another example. This one was actually highlighted in the video. They are the custom sanitation trailer manufacturer. And they did find opportunities in every waste category. So we don't have all of them listed here for the companies, but I just kind of picked some highlights that I thought might be interesting to see. So for them, they had just some leaky fixtures. So they had older fixtures than in the shop restrooms, and the kind of thing that just gets missed for a long time. Wasn't a large volume of water, but it was one that they did decide that they should fix it so that they're not leaking and not wasting water. They also mentioned in the video, they're looking at modifying the way that they fill and test to improve the water, and they're looking into a a rainwater collection system as a potential source of water. They're still working on that, so it's not listed here yet. On the air side, they have propane forklifts, and they are eliminating those by installing an electric lift. So that's a great opportunity to minimize the emissions caused by propane, as well as just the, what is being in the air that the employees are breathing. They are also installing a new air filtration system for their paint area, and they're looking into solar photovoltaic installation to, again, reduce their carbon footprint. On the solid side, some of these projects are simple and some are complex and rely on a number of moving parts. So we ended up looking at first identifying some of the issues we saw. And then when we started looking for solutions, that's where it got a little bit more complicated. So for them, they were wrapping part of their product in plastic wrap because it had to be moved in and out of the bay, and they had to protect it. So really it was the process and the order of operations that was generating this waste plastic wrap. So we were able to reevaluate their layout, and as part of that, make it a more logical process so that we didn't have to wrap it as much as it originally was being wrapped. They also are getting a 15% reduction in their wood waste, about 364 cubic yards per year. And they have installed new recycling opportunities for a variety of things, including cardboard. So they've got about 312 cubic yards per year that they're now diverting from the landfill that's being recycled. And one of the ones when we did this training for them that everybody kind of groaned the most about was paper. And it literally was one person in the office who printed every single email, including all of the pages of forwarded emails. And when we talked about it, the consensus in the class was, we're never going to change this person's behavior. It's impossible. And lo and behold, they actually succeeded. So they have eliminated the printing of emails, and it wasn't as hard as they thought it was going to be. So even behavior change sometimes is possible and not as difficult as you might think. On the toxic side, they also had a number of different tool batteries and household batteries that they, again, are newly recycling. And on the energy side, they're working on upgrading windows. They've also replaced an old HVAC system with some new high efficiency mini split systems, which is about a 30% energy savings for them. And they fixed a number of compressed air leaks, which totaled about 1,500 kilowatt hours per year. So during the training, a lot of the work is done, live in the group. So we start off probably pretty messy. We collect, we brainstorm, we try and just capture as much as we possibly can. So we rely a lot on these whiteboards, and we do a lot of kind of back of the napkin calculations. When we're just starting the training program, we want to make sure that we don't miss anything. So we'll talk about, gut reaction, rule of thumb. And then as we start to get a sense of scale and we say, this looks like it could be a good project, that's when we go back and we start collecting more precise data so that we can really fine tune that. But in the beginning, it is just about as messy as you see here on these whiteboards. So another company that we're working with, which is a food manufacturer, they had some great opportunities. This was a company that is already, I would say, fairly sustainability minded. They've already done a lot of the low hanging fruit. And this training for them was an opportunity to really up their game and see, what have we missed? So for them, one of the great things was their water project. They had a number of totes that had to be washed periodically. And so they actually redesigned the tote washing process so that they could use gray water for initial rinse. That ended up saving them about 100,000 gallons of water per year. Another one, which I find very exciting on the solid side, is the shrink wrap. This is something that I see in almost every facility that we walk through. Plastic shrink wrap is incredibly common and incredibly useful, and it's hard to eliminate, especially when we're talking about shipping something very long distances. For them, they actually had an opportunity because they were using shrink wrap internally. They were wrapping pallets of ingredients just to move from one department to another and then unwrapping it. So for them, this was a great opportunity to say, is there some way we can find a reusable method. And they did. So they ended up identifying and working with another manufacturer who generated a reusable container that they can easily use. It meets the FDA requirements for, food grade usage. So that eliminated $75,000 worth of shrink wrap per year. And they also have a new goal to be zero waste in the dough rooms. They are additionally recycling PPE. They have a lot of personal protective equipment because of their work being food related. And they have a new program now where they can identify and recycle all of that PPE. Lastly, on the energy side, they ended up working to conduct a more in-depth energy assessment as a result of the training. They actually partnered with their utility and were able to identify a number of projects that they're now working on implementing. For all of the trainings that we do for the waste stream mapping, one of the core tools that we teach everybody is these 4 R's and this hierarchy. So what we try and really get through to every part of the group is that recycling is great. Recycling is a wonderful thing. However, it is not the end all be all. And again, what I see often is that companies will kind of check the box. Well, we're recycling that, so let's move on. But the reality is we can have so much more impact as we work to climb higher up on this upside down pyramid. And really, when you think about it, if we draw this line here, you can see everything below the line. If we're talking about reusing something or recycling something, disposing of something, all we're doing is managing the waste. We're managing the outputs after they've been generated. So what we really encourage people to do is push themselves above that line and say, before we generate this waste, is there some way we could at least reduce the quantity that we're going to generate? Or ideally, is there a way that we can completely refuse to create the waste in the first place? Oftentimes things above this line, because we're dealing with the input side, are either design engineering kind of decisions, purchasing decisions, or changing the way or looking at our processes themselves to minimize the generation of that waste. So again, this is one of the fundamental things that we try and really infuse when we do the training, and we encourage the team members to push each other and challenge each other. So when we do brainstorming, we talk about, okay, if somebody says we can recycle that, that's great. But let's not stop there. Let's talk about how can we reduce the amount that we're generating before we get to recycling it. Here's another example. This is a company that makes components for RVs. It's a large company, so some of the numbers you'll see here are going to be more significant. A couple of ones that were very interesting and unique to them. On the solid side, they had a number of 2x4s that they were basically just having little bits and pieces that were cut off, and it was generating a lot of waste. So they reevaluated how and where they were using these. It was primarily for separating product and stacking product. And they were able to identify $165,000 a year in savings by eliminating the purchasing and then the waste of that wood product. They also had, again, unique to them, a powder coating issue where they had these little end caps that would go into these tubes that they were making. And when it went through the powder coating process, these caps would then, after they went through, they would get thrown away. In theory, they were supposed to be reusable, but in reality, they were really just getting tossed a majority of the time. They also had rolls of heat tape that they were working to keep those on. So all of that process really was just not working for them. So we went through a pretty intensive process of brainstorming for solutions. They had to pilot and test some of these to make sure that they would work, that they wouldn't affect quality. And ultimately, they were able to reduce about 3,000 caps and 1,700 rolls of heat tape from the landfill each year, which is about a $45,000 savings in material purchase costs and an additional $125,000 in labor savings. So we make sure to count on the labor savings as well, where we're doing the calculations to estimate the impacts from these projects. Another one here that is one of my favorites is they had, again, for shipping purposes, they were custom making these little pillows, if you will, that would protect the product during shipping. So they had somebody who was standing there with, the 2 tanks of liquid spray foam chemicals. and spraying these bags, filling them with this liquid spray foam that would then puff up, and then they would set the product on it, and so it would form around it and protect it. It worked great. However, the chemicals that they were using were terrible, and it also was expensive, and they were paying people to just keep making these things. So overall, we explored a number of different potential solutions. They ultimately replaced those with returnable dunnage, and it ended up being a $370,000 cost savings. And then lastly, for this company on the compressed air side, they did a complete compressed air overhaul and are saving about $120,000 a year in energy savings there as well. When we do the training for companies, as I said, some of these projects are fairly straightforward, some are fairly complicated. So we also share a number of tools that we've developed to help the companies get started. This is an example of how we would, some of the factors that we would look at when we're trying to assess the value of a potential project. So in this case, this one was a water project. So you can see that we were looking at what is the cost of the water, what's the cost of the soap that they were using to clean the floors. They had contamination, and so then they had waste hydraulic oil that they were having to concentrate into a sludge, if you will, and have hauled off as hazardous material. They also had an evaporator that was burning off water in order to concentrate into that sludge. So we were able to calculate all of the different costs that go into this to get a total purchase price, including the energy consumption, and then looking at the disposal costs, which again, because we were dealing with some hazardous material, was quite expensive. And then we created a future state. We said, all right, well, what if we make these changes? How does that play out? So again, we built this tool for them. We shared this with them. Ultimately, we can see that there was a purchase savings. I can make that a little bit bigger here. A purchase savings of $80,000, a disposal savings of $47,000, actually a little bit of new revenue from reselling the oil, and emission reductions of over 1 million pounds of CO2, and a total cost reduction of $132,000 annually. So again, not an easy project per se, but having these tools available to the companies helps make it a little bit more manageable to estimate what we're looking at. And then I'm going to talk about the 2 more companies. Both of these actually are related, and then I'll introduce Bob in a minute here. So briefly, I'm going to talk about some of the results that they have. He's going to go into more detail specifically about their experience. So with this automotive transmission company, we had a process where we were looking at modifying the backwash, and that one ended up being a huge savings, 8.8 million gallons of water per year. The cost for the purchasing of the water is relatively low, but the impact of saving that much water is very high. On the air side, they were looking at compressed air tools and switching those over where possible to non-air tools, so electric tools, other methodologies to achieve the same thing. So that allowed them to save a significant amount of kilowatt hours per year, just due to compressed air is very inefficient. So it's a costly way to do things. They are also looking into smart air monitoring. And on the toxic side, they were looking at recycling grinder waste. And again, I'll let Bob get into more of the details on that, but you can see that there's some really good potential here. The other company that's related to this does casting. And so for them, again, they had a number of different projects in all of the waste categories. One was looking at basically just optimizing a process for their quench tank, which saved about 1 million gallons of water per year. Looking at rolling out a new compressed air detection program to detect leaks. Looking at gloves and how those were being sent to the landfill, and looking at the opportunity to potentially wash and reuse those. Also looking at sludge recovery and sludge dewatering. And on the energy side, looking at installing VFDs on a number of locations, as well as those few lights that remain that were not yet LED, looking at switching those over as well. So at that point, I'm going to ask Bob to join and talk a little bit more about his experience going through the waste stream mapping program, and specifically about a couple of these projects.
Thank you, Kelly. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right. So to go back to what Kelly stated, I'm going to focus on one project from each of those, the automotive machining plant and the automotive casting plant. As a side note, at the machining plant, we also lowered our plant pressure to the floor by 5. We went from 85, we're down to 83 right now. We're going to try and continue to lower that. That will save us obviously kilowatt hours as well.
That's great, Bob. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's something that we looked at once we looked at our air monitoring.
Nice.
So, but what I want to focus on is both related to grants that we applied for based off of the lessons learned from the program. Our first one is at the machining plant. It is the waste recycling of the grinding swarf. And we make multiple transmissions here in our plant. This one is related to an 8-speed transmission that we make. And we have some grinding applications that were generating a swarf. Swarf was being collected into hoppers. Hoppers were then being taken and dumped into big roll-offs, and then the roll-offs were being hauled off. So what we did is we dove into this project to look at the composition of the swarf. And we looked at the oil in the material is about $14 a gallon that we're using to machine. And our goal was to try and see if we could minimize both our waste impact and try and capture that oil back out. So what we ended up finding out is that when we analyzed the swarf, oops, sorry. You guys still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I lost the presentation, so. But when we analyzed the swarf, 58% of the weight in that swarf was associated with the oil. With that being said, we're sending roll-offs out with this swarf with obviously a lot of weight attributed to a material, and we were getting, it was essentially, we were selling it for BTU. So by instituting the project, we would provide a reusable waste stream. We'd be able to accumulate more actual metal waste into the roll-off, fewer shipments, reducing our CO2 to transport. Also then segregating the oil out, purifying, filtering, centrifuging the oil, and then putting it back in for reuse. So the project and the application for the grant was to actually add a scraper bar and a rewinder on the machines. They had paper media that we were using to help filter the oil and segregate the metal swarf. We were getting a combination of the filter media mixed with the swarf and the oil all into the roll-off. So we had another contamination stream that we were trying to remove. So this project, we were going to have a filter media stream. We were going to have a dry swarf stream and then a reusable oil stream. So the project was to institute a rewinder, which would allow us to hold tension on the filter paper, keep it segregated from going into the roll-off. Adding a scraper bar to the paper that would allow us to remove the swarf off of the paper, put that into the hopper. The hopper, which would then be swarf and oil, would then be taken to a filter press. The oil squeezed out of the swarf, if you will, pucked into, and then the soft pucks would then be transported into the metal roll-offs. All that being said, the savings on this from the oil recovery alone was about 145,000. Our benefit cost ratio on the project was at a 5.6, which is the cost to install versus the benefit that we get. We still haven't quantified. We're waiting till the project gets initiated. There's 9 machines to do this on a read across. We're waiting to see what the CO2 implications for waste hauling are before we finally put all the projects together or all the funds together on the total savings of the project. The next slide, if you can go to the next one, is our water reduction in the casting plant. So this is kind of unique. As Kelly mentioned, water is looked at a low cost and almost looked at as, you know, it's readily available, will never run out. At our company, we've instituted a sustainability program, and they're measuring plant performances off of water consumption, waste generation, CO2 emissions, biodiversity, and waste recovery. So all of these have different metrics, weighted metrics. Anyways, it allows us to put a greater weight and a greater emphasis on the importance of saving water. So this project in particular was, we have water going into, we call them dunk tanks. So the part, it's a die casting application. The part comes out of the die, smoking hot. We stick it into a tank, maybe 100, 200 gallons full of water, and we cool the part. 2 purposes of cooling the part is, one, to help quench, but also make it lower the temperature for the operators to handle the part as it comes down. They are hand loaded once they come out of the die cast operation. So it serves as a multi-purpose. What the project was is we were putting flow sensors, temperature sensors on the inputs of the dunk tank and on the inputs of the water fill. These meters were then linked to it's called a datacast tracking system. It allows us to, which gets monitored for the plant to see. So we will then be able to monitor how often the fill is on. And the goal is that we shouldn't have the fill on. If the fill has to be on, then we obviously need to go back into the system and figure out why we are needing the water fill to be on to keep the temperature of the tank at a comfortable level. So it adds a lot of benefit for us long-term on a part quality side as well, that if the parts are coming out hotter than expected, perhaps we need to go back and look at, are we sending the cooling water in too hot, which isn't allowing us to take out the heat required. Kind of an innovative project, allows a lot of monitoring for us, which we have not integrated these dunk tanks in to our plant monitoring system. We have, we plan on doing this read across to all the die cast machines. There's 48 of them in the plant that this would be applicable to. So again, interesting tool that as we start this project, the information gathered, I think, is going to be priceless of what we get back, both initially for us to save on the water reduction for our KPI, but ultimately to try and help improve performance and quality, which again, is any quality improvements we can make is huge for us over here.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Bob. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us and talk through those projects. Certainly, there's a lot more detail that you can get into on those than I would be able to, because it is very specific to your processes.
Thank you.
All right. And we will have time at the end for questions. I do have just a couple more examples to share with you. This is another company that also is in the automotive industry. They make a variety of parts here. For them, they were doing a different type of water testing, and they looked at ways to optimize that process. And for them, it ended up being a more substantial savings. And from the spreadsheet that I shared earlier, you can see that there's also a range in terms of how people come up with these annual cost savings. In some cases, some companies are just looking at, what do we pay to purchase this? Period. Others are, it's a rolled up number that includes, purchase costs, disposal costs, maybe chemicals for water treatment, the labor costs. And so the numbers will vary depending on, how many factors they're incorporating into that total dollar value. With this company, they also were looking at, they had kind of a unique opportunity where they have what's called auto cells, and they were really just above a threshold that required them to have protective hearing equipment, so earplugs. And they were actually able to find ways to reduce the noise level just, enough to get under that threshold. And that eliminated the need for them to be purchasing and disposing of over 84,000 earplugs per year. They also had a solids project looking at paper reduction. Again, this actually came from a number of different approaches. Some of them are physical, some of them are procedural, some of them are behavioral, but it was about a $10,000 savings for them on that front. They also had some leaky hydraulics that they were able to identify, repair, and then save about $16,000 a year worth of oil costs. And they were able to reduce the use of what's called pig matting, which is an absorbent, by about 6,200 pounds per year. And then lastly, they did an energy audit, and through all of the different measures that they identified, they had about a $40,000 a year energy savings. This is another company that manufactures pumps, and they had some interesting projects as well. On the water side, they had some unique things due to the type of testing that they do, being a manufacturer of pumps. So they were able to find ways to reuse some of the water, and that allowed them to, again, they're still kind of working on a range, but it's between 18,000 and 36,000 gallons per year that they're going to be able to reuse. And they're also looking into, and they've done a study now on rainwater capture to be able to use that for some of the testing. There'd be obviously a little bit of filtration and cleaning required to make sure it's suitable for the use, but that would take another 1 million gallons per year out of what they are currently purchasing from the city. They also were able to look at redesigning, again, the transportation and methodology and layout to eliminate propane forklifts, which eliminated about almost 40,000 pounds of propane per year, which is a $10,000 savings for them. And then on the solid side, another one that I see quite commonly is we've got a lot of wood waste from pallets. For them, it was about 1,000 tons over 2 years, and they were able to divert that. Again, working with that for our hierarchy, some of it is looking at how do we talk to our suppliers, how do we work with them to maybe streamline or narrow the sizes that we have so that we could reuse them internally, or that they can have added value before they end up going out somewhere and being recycled. On the toxicity side, they were also then identifying projects to capture more of those waste oils, which you'll see that some of these are repeat, that we see a similar project in a number of different companies. And on the energy side, they ended up looking at some automatic controls because they had a number of exhaust fans. And so the shop floor exhaust fans were utilizing about 40,000 kilowatt hours per year that were eliminated. So it was about a $4,000 savings on the energy side as well. So as we wrap up, I just wanted to share this kind of little burst of inspiration that, a lot of the projects that we see really are not necessarily the things that have never been looked at before, but if we don't do it now, sometimes later becomes never. And I think that's one of the advantages of having us come in and do this training, is that some of the companies are able to really drive these projects forward that otherwise may have, languished for another number of years before eventually coming around and being tackled. So at this point, if anybody has questions for myself or for Bob, we'd be happy to answer those questions. If you have specific things that you would like to email me and inquire about, my email's on the screen, and I'd be happy to talk with you that way as well. And Jennifer, if we don't have any questions, or if nobody's raising their hands, I think you can also enter questions into the chat box. So there's a variety of ways that you're welcome to participate if you would like to. And otherwise, if we don't have any questions, then I can turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Does anyone have any questions for her or Bob? Okay. We really appreciate the partnership with Purdue on these adventures that we have under these federal grants. And we are also applying this spring for another grant. We hope to achieve that and receive that in the fall. And so hopefully, fingers crossed, we will have additional funds to support additional manufacturers in going through the similar process with Kelly and her colleagues at Purdue. So,
Awesome. Look forward to
yeah.
it. Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I think we have time here. We're ahead of schedule. It's good. And we've got Ben up next for our partners updates. And then we will also be having a breakout session for breakout rooms, and we can talk a little bit more about how we're doing that. I've got a question here from Eric Foster. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question involves just a relationship between Purdue and consulting companies who might provide similar services to industries, and just, have you had any interaction with consulting companies or other waste management companies who might offer similar services? And I just like, what comments you might have as far as what those, or how those interactions have been. Are they supportive? Are they not supportive? And because I see some overlap and actually some potential conflicts there. So.
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the things that I would say is kind of unique about us is that with the training, the types of things that we come into companies and we work on doing, we're really focused on shifting mindsets and opening eyes to opportunities. When it gets to the level of, how or who specifically do I bring in to help me filter my oil, that's going to be a specialist, a consultant, a subcontractor, somebody that's not us. So it's unique. I would say one of the things that I love about working with Purdue is that because we are a nonprofit, I'm not driven to say, oh, you need to hire us to do that. And in a lot of cases, when we simply don't have that expertise and we have no desire to. So I also get companies that will, follow up and say, hey, I've gotten quotes from, these 3 companies. Do they, and they'll ask us kind of for an objective third-party opinion, like, do they look comparable, or are we missing anything? So we, again, we've got, within my team, we've got certain expertise. We also have a separate program that actually, it's called the TAP 40. So when we do this training, some of the projects where they get very technical, very fast, we have the opportunity to go to campus and see if we've got faculty, professors that are experts in that area who can offer their guidance and expertise. But yeah, for the most part, when it gets to a certain level of implementation, we're not really involved at that point. We just, the companies often do a lot of that vetting themselves, but if they have questions, we're always here to help, guide them to resources. But we don't partner or say, oh, you want to do this, you should hire this company.
Mhm. Okay. All right, thanks. And then a quick follow-up. I might have missed this, but how much are students involved in any of the work you do at the plants?
Yeah, that's another good question. The video might have been a little bit misleading because the only time students are involved are if we do those faculty projects with folks on campus. Everything that Purdue MEP does directly on site is just folks like myself that are experts from industry. I think very, very few, if any of us, are actually professors. We're all people that worked, in manufacturing, around manufacturing, and have specific knowledge sets. So we don't have any students that are involved in our projects directly.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. And it is our goal as IDEM pollution prevention folks to get you the information so that you can implement it yourself at your facility, to teach you to fish instead of having someone fish for you. So that's our ultimate goal, to get you the education that's needed to do so. So that's why we like to partner with Purdue. Any other questions? Okay. I don't see any other hands. Ben, would you like to go ahead and give us the partners update?
Yeah, I sure would, Jennifer. I just wanted to ask one question, because, we are ahead of schedule. Is 2:15 to 3:15 for the commissioner's presentation, is that a hard number? So when we get done with the partners update, are we just we're gonna have our Zoom breakout for X amount of minutes and still return at 2:15?
Yes,
Okay.
we can. It is a hard 2:15 for him to join us.
That's
So
what I thought. That's why I just wanted to make
if we have
sure
any,
that
sure. If people need a break right now, that's fine. We could take a 10-minute break, or if you want to go ahead and get started, that's fine. Either
Well,
way.
let's go ahead and do the partners updates then, and then we can give people, I know it's still kind of lunchtime for some people. So, by the time we get done, then, people can actually, if we want to take a little longer break from that, eat lunch or something, that would be wonderful. So, we can go ahead and start. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to have the updates as of March 31st, 2022. Of course, my name is Ben McKnight. I'm the Executive Director for the Partners for Pollution Prevention. The Assistant Director is Ron Roskerberg, and the Treasurer is Krista McKenna. And then we have the rest of the members listed below. We do have 101 companies that are members throughout the state of Indiana. And I think we talked about this once before, that the number did drop some, but we have had some corporates, some individual facilities changed into corporate facilities. So they kind of all went under one umbrella in more than one case. We have had a couple closing, but in the most cases, it has been more of a merger. If you're not a member, you do have the link below. You can click on the link if you'd like to become a member, or you can ask one of us, Jennifer, Jean, myself, an executive committee member, if you know them, and we can help you get it set up. As you know, membership is free and voluntary. Applicants must commit to the Partners Pledge to be inducted in the program. We would like the anticipation of the commitment to go to 2 or more meetings throughout the year. Some of these will be virtual, and some of them, maybe remain virtual for a good period of time, just due to logistics in some cases. This is a contingency of having and maintaining standard environmental compliance. and each partner is required to complete an annual performance recertification and APR report to remain a member. And then later on this afternoon, we're going to go over that because we did have a lot of discussions on the APRs and how they're filled out and how we're normalizing data. And so, Laura Grumman, Jennifer Collins, and myself and Gene Fixit, we're going to go over that later on this afternoon. If we'd like for you to join us. We do have a little less than 100 members on our LinkedIn page. You're more than welcome to join us on LinkedIn. We would love to have you as part of that. You can invite other colleagues or people to the meeting. I was just at a place yesterday and distributed partners information to see if they'd like to become a member. And you can also go to the link below. Our summer meetings at Kimball Electronics is a proposed meeting in Jasper. The date and time as we get a little closer will become available. Our conference is September 21st at the Marriott North at Keystone Crossing. Same facility we've been having it at for the last few years. And actually through the executive committee and the help with our partners at IDEM, we're going to have a really good conference. I think we got some really good speakers lined up for this year. And then December of 22 is yet to be determined. I think all of us are afraid to commit to anything due to some of the COVID outbreaks and what happens in some of the company policies. And so as we get through summer, if you would like to become a site for December, please say so. We would love to help you host a quarterly meeting at your facility. And I know a lot of our members would like that, just so we could go to other places and have more interaction than either via Zoom meetings or phone calls. Ron, are you on here? I haven't had a chance to look. And if you are, could you unmute? Well, I don't know if Ron's on here, and we don't normally do this, but being in LinkedIn, it did come up on a LinkedIn note from Ron. Ron has just completed his 38th year at Kimball International. As environmental manager, regulatory compliance, corporate recycling manager of Kimball International. He's been the assistant executive director for the partners for many years, and yes, his small business is Muddy Paul's Daylily Garden, and I know if he was here, he would tell you how many cats he's got. So he's got Muddy Paws all over the place, and like I said, we don't normally do this, and I know there's probably other members and people, so don't take offense. But if you join LinkedIn and it pops up, and 38 years is a milestone for anybody at any facility. So. We just wanted to congratulate Ron, for his years of service, not only at Kimball, but, on the executive committee and the partners as well. That's all I've got. I know they got us pegged till 1:50, and that's why I asked the questions prior to, because we can do some networking. I know we got networking time set for about 15-20 minutes. We can go ahead and do our networking time for 15 to 20, and then just take our break for the remaining time. And we will all reconvene at 2:15. Now, one thing that I did want to mention that we haven't talked about, and it wasn't on the slide, is we are going to give out a gift card at our closing comments before we adjourn. If it runs before 4, so be it. But you do need to be present, because I will be picking the person at random. And if your name's not on the screen, you're not going to be chosen. So just to kind of let you know that we will be giving away an Amazon gift card, and look forward to talking to everybody, I guess, in about an hour. So thank you.
Hang on a second. Hang on.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we just make a swap here and go ahead and go into our presentation, and then we can end
I
the
would
day
love
early?
to do that, Jennifer. I would love to do that if you would like to do that. I'm okay with it. If I know if you're okay with it, it works great for me. I just hadn't had a chance to text you there or email you that comment right now.
I'm all for being efficient here. So if everybody's okay, I think we'll move into the annual pledge recertification tutorial and the discussion about our new award programs.
Sure.
So
No, I've stopped sharing. So if you would like
okay.
to take over this, and you're gonna run the slides on this one.
I sure am.
Well, I don't have them, so
Yeah,
either you
I sure am.
or Laura's
Yeah.
gonna have to.
Laura, are you available? Ready?
Hi, yes,
Hi.
I am.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all
Laura's
for
just being
bearing with
quiet.
us. We'll get you out of here earlier today if we do it this way. All righty. And just one moment here.
Jennifer has like 12 screens around her. That's why she keeps.
I do. How to. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, great.
Now I was going to start out with the first few slides. I was going to do the first four. So we're actually going to do our P2 membership. Of course, we did talk about it was free. Applicants must commit to the pledge. The contingency of having a good environmental compliance, and then completing the APRs, due by June 1st of each year. Okay, go ahead, Jennifer. To be a member of the Partners for Pollution Prevention, you need to ensure your employees are aware that of your commitment to pollution prevention, and to be in corporation, the P2 plan develops new products, processes, and services. Our facility here at Electrospect, we just had our annual 14,001-2015 last week, and yes, that was one of their questions. How do we engage people with our environmental policies and our programs? And the partners is one of those. So and we were able to show them our impacts and aspects, and how we work with not only 14,001 with the partners group as well. Here's the important one: establish mechanisms to monitor the waste generated and identified realistic and P2 goals. That was one we've been doing LED lighting for the last couple of years at our facility, and we were trying to roll that into energy savings. And as the year 2021 to the year 2022, it became more and more difficult to use energy savings. If you don't know about our facility, we're a precious metal plating facility, and we've acquired some new programs that's required us to increase the size of our rectifiers by 2- and 3-fold. So by trying to use electricity costs to get our P2 goals was impossible, because our electric cost is going to increase with the generator, with the rectifiers. So we actually switched everything to the reduction of kilowatt hours, which is easy to measure, and it's more realistic to the goals instead of energy costs. Establish and process to listen and the response of the stakeholders of the companies. Make sure you got buy-in, because it's you're going to have a tough time if you don't. Make available at request, communities, IDEM partners, and we do that at our facility. We actually have a company coming in at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning at our facility to talk about some elimination, not only at our facility, but they're going to piggyback on elimination of hazardous materials in your workplace. And we're doing trials here, and they're just going to piggyback on our trials because they're within 5 minutes away. So, it's great. We can, eliminate hazards in 2 facilities with 1 trial and not have to prolong this for years at a time. So, those are the type of things that you can do to partnership with your community and other businesses. Establish an outreach program or promoting and supporting the partners. And yes, when they're here tomorrow, we're going to talk about, this company joining the partners as well, because they do all the right things. And they've asked about it, and I'll be talking to them a little more about it. We would appreciate if you could participate at 2 or more quarterly meetings. it's been impossible over the last 2 to 3 years for everybody to make meetings. Even though some of them, a lot of them have been virtual, and we understand that. Some people's roles have changed. Yes, they're still part of this program and they're still the contact at their facility, but they may be put into, more of a safety role and security role with all the COVID issues. So as we get into roll into the end of 2022 and into 23, it would be awesome if we could get people to come. And I think most people will. And our conference was a good show that, people are willing and they want to get out and do these things. And then submit your partner's annual pollution prevention activity certification or your APR in a timely manner. That's always a challenge. And so that's one of the reasons that we're going to talk about that. Okay, thank you, Jennifer. If you do have a new contact at your facility and you're on our meeting today, and please send us the new contact. We do have an example here, for Laura, and because that's one of the issues that we do have when we try to send out reminders for the APRs. A lot of times they go to email addresses that do not exist anymore, and there's times Jean Fix, she has to track down the facility and find out who's actually in charge of this, and some companies get them and they don't know what to do with them because that person's not there any longer. And so we would love to help. So if you do have a new person in this role or a new person that's going to be taking your role, you please let us know. Gene would love to be able to get these in and us get them back and be able to calculate the data and have it ready for the conference in September. So with that being said, Laura, I think you're next.
I just want to
Yes.
make a comment on
Yes,
that
ma'am.
slide as well. We have that note on there, consider including this on your site's compliance calendar, because it's important for your your successor to make sure that they're communicating about this membership. So if you put that into your documentation about things that you're involved in and requirements, then we'll be sure to be notified of that new contact. And thank you. I'll turn it over to Laura.
Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Laura Groom. Could you go to the next slide, please, Jennifer? Okay. So I'm going to go over the actual annual performance review part by part and just talk about what needs to be put into the different blanks when you submit your APR. The part one of APR is pretty basic information. You'll just put your site address, contact information, number of employees, and whether or not there have been any changes in products or activities, and then whether or not you wish to recertify as a partner. And hopefully everyone will select yes when they come to that box. Could you go to the next slide, please, Jennifer? Thank you. So part two of the APR, the top portion of it is only applicable to people who are service providers or consultants. And they want to know about any projects that maybe were done for a customer. A lot of times this gets left blank, and it's really important to share that information. It also can result in good public recognition if you've completed a successful P2 project for one of your clients. So please make sure to complete that part. The bottom portion of part two is for applicable to everyone, and it just asks some questions about whether or not you have provided information to your customers or your employees on P2 projects or opportunities and that sort of thing. So the third part of the APR is where we get into the real meat of the performance review. And this is where we ask for people to talk about what projects, P2 projects they completed the previous year that were successful. And it's important to know that sometimes, you know, if it was a good year for you, you may have had more than one project. So please make sure to give us more than one if you have more than one. You know, when you look at the form, it might look like it's only got enough space to put information for one, but you can always add additional pages. So you'll select the category that fits the project or projects that define best define what your project was. And Jennifer, could you go to the next slide, please? And then the other part of the third part of the APR is where you put the actual calendar year, the baseline that you used to the current year, and you show the reduction of whatever it was. Could be solid waste, could be air emissions, could be a reduction in kilowatt hours, etc. It's really important to put the units. So for the example that we're looking at on the screen right now, it was water, and we made sure to put the unit, which was gallons, and then cost savings. Typically, you will see a cost savings, so that's important to share also. And another part of the APR in part 3 relates to normalization, and Jennifer Collins is going to go over how to complete that portion of the APR. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. So I know we've talked about this topic before, and it can be a challenge for folks to normalize their data, and it also can be something that's varied from company to company. So I'm going to just suggest this is how we are looking at it from our perspective. So it's the process of calculating reduction data to demonstrate that the reduction was not just due to production volume changes, and it was actually the result of an environmental improvement. And so that's why we're asking for this normalization. It separates the production quantities from the environmental efficiencies. So when we calculate this normalizing factor, we use the following formula, and we're indicating the normalizing factor by a capital I. And so we take the current year production quantity and divide that by the base year production quantity to come up with a ratio. That normalizing factor is a ratio. And you can choose another way to normalize. We know that other companies out there, you know, have different ways that they normalize their data. That is fine as long as you're normalizing it to your overall production. And I will also note, if you have a product or a project that is an absolute quantity, I had this question come in the other day. If you have a project that is not related to production, let's say you installed pasture plantings and had benefits from, you know, these native plantings, you're not going to have that related to production. So you're saying the number of acres that you planted in that case, or you had something that was just a side project that you did in relationship with a community or some other type of situation, you would just report that absolute reduction. So we understand that in that circumstance. So to calculate the actual reduction, we're asking you to take the project unit quantity that from the current year and subtract what the baseline quantity was and multiply it by that normalizing factor. So we have an example here. you'll see that the baseline year was 2019 and the current year was 2020. We've had a change of the quantity of hazardous waste generated from 87,740 pounds to 53,200 pounds. And then we have the production quantities in both of those years. You'll see that the production quantity in this case did go down by almost 100,000. So that affects the normalization in this case. So you have the current year production divided by the base year production. That gives us a ratio of 0.793415, if you want to take it out that far. So we have the production unit quantity, and we take for the current year, and then we take the production unit quantity base year, subtract that from the current year, and multiply it by this 0.793. That's your ratio. So you have a reduction of 27,404 in a normalized situation. So that took into account the reduction based on production, and that wasn't due to the environmental project. So hopefully that helps understand, and I'm happy to talk with anyone who has any questions on this as you're putting together your data. If you're not familiar with normalizing your data, and if you do normalize it in a different way and you'd like to report that using your formal way that you use at your facility, please do submit it and give us an explanation of how you normalized it. That's pretty much what we'll be asking you at the other side. So if you do that up front, you'll avoid us asking questions on the back end. And I just want to clarify, the reason that we do collect this data and put it all together is that we want to share the fantastic work that you all are doing with our partners. The governor's office wants to hear from us about that. We report to the EPA, and we also share it with others. And just like you heard today from Kelly, some of the examples, we want to share this information with all of you on projects that are really helpful that you may want to incorporate into your facilities. So that being said, we do have a new partners recognition program that I have been working on in conjunction with Lynn Partridge and Alan Resnick. And so since I was speaking today, they said, you go ahead and announce the program. So I will do that. And we'd like to announce that we will be doing 2 recognition awards per year. So one is the P2 Ambassador Award. And this award category is focused on an individual from a partner organization who basically embodies the principles of the Indiana Partners for Pollution Prevention. So it means that they've been in leadership, they've been not only in the partners program, but also at their facility, and being an innovator and educating the teams of people that they work with. And they're dedicated to pollution prevention, the ideas, and training other people or mentoring others on implementing pollution prevention at their facilities. So you must be a member in good standing and in the Indiana Partners for Pollution Prevention. And the award will go to a recipient only one time, so they cannot have received the award previously. And since this is the inaugural year, no one has ever received this award before. The second award is the Outstanding Partners for Pollution Prevention member. And this will recognize a partner organization, so the company. And it is for implementing pollution prevention at the member's location in that previous calendar year. So this will be based on your annual, your APR, annual performance report or recertification. We know that we have members that are dual members in both ESP and partners. So we want to make sure that we include everyone. So the APRs for ESP are due in April, and those that are due just for partners only are due in June 1st. So we have opened this up to allow for anyone to submit the information. There will be an application. And so it covers basically what project you submitted on your annual performance report, and then give us more details on the application when you submit it to the recognition program. But both of these forms will be available. We will be sending them out with the email that goes out to partners for the APR. They will be due by June 1st, and that is on purpose to coordinate with the due date of your APR, because you can use the data from your APR to fill out the forms if you were to nominate someone or nominate yourself for this program. So they will be due by June 1st by 5 p.m. that day. And those are to be sent to Lynn Partridge, and all of these details will be sent out, like I said, to the partners members. For those of you that already submitted your ESP reports, we have given you a heads up on this recognition program, and you will also get detailed information on the forms, so you can submit those. So thank you. Thank you from the Partners Executive Committee. We hope that you have gained some insight from this additional information about the annual performance review. And Ben, go ahead and chime in.
Jennifer?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Gene just let me know via email that the meeting at for Kimball Electronics in Jasper, they're not going to be able to host in the summer.
Okay.
So I wanted to just put that out there before we do go to break and our networking, that you know, if you would like to host, you please let us know. You know, we will help you. This isn't something you have to do on your own if you've never done it before. We've got plenty of executive committee members that have hosted at their facilities that can help you get this set up. So with that being said, I just wanted to bring that out before I thought about waiting until the closing, but I thought it would be better suited now so people could actually think about it. So thank you.
Sure, thank you. Jean, did you have a comment?
Yes, I have had a couple members that are ESP partners members that are having issues with the normalizing of data. They are finding a decrease, a reduction based upon per unit measure, but because they've increased total production, based upon total production, it is an increase. So it's so they're actually decreasing. In this particular case, it's water usage. So they are decreasing the amount of water used per unit produced, but it still shows an increase based upon how normalization works. Can they report per unit?
They can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions for any of us? Okay. And let's see. What's next on the agenda here? Okay, so I think we have some time to do some networking. And I know that most of you have probably been on Zoom a lot over the last 2 years, but we want to make sure that everyone knows what we're going to be doing here. The Zoom folks have updated their breakout rooms so that you can actually select the room that you're in. I will put you in original rooms, and you will also be able to see what rooms other folks are in. So the names of individuals will be listed on your screen. You'll need to go down to the lower bar and select breakout rooms. You'll see kind of a 4 square down at the bottom when I open the rooms. And then once you're assigned to a room, you can say hello to those folks in that room. And then if you choose to leave that room and go find someone that you haven't gotten to talk to in a while, or that you would like to meet, please find their name on the list of rooms and click on that room to go see them. This is a little way to kind of move around and network with other individuals. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the rooms. And if you do want to take a break, if you're finished networking, we will resume with Brian Rockensus at 2:15. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the rooms now. And we've got 38 here. So just do 7 rooms. And I'm going to create those. And like I said, you can see the names on your screen. And let me make sure. I'm going to open the rooms. Can you all see the rooms?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's got a total of 7 rooms
And-
to join.
All right. And you can go. Let's see.
Is there any rhyme or reason
Okay.
to the rooms? Like, are any dedicated to just manufacturing or to, other things?
We didn't do that today, but if there's someone that you would like to meet, we have some folks that have their name listed, but maybe not their company. If you would like to, if you could update your name with your company name, that might be helpful. And I'm just going to randomly assign folks to rooms right now, but you can feel free to move if you'd like to. Hi, Mike. Oh. Good afternoon, everybody. My pleasure to welcome you back to our meeting. And also I'd like to welcome our commissioner, Brian Rockensus. And Brian was appointed our commissioner last year in December. And he, prior to that, had served as the chief of staff since 2016 and worked as our agency's director of governmental affairs and business and ag and legislative liaison prior to that. So we welcome you to the Partners Quarterly Meeting today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jen, and thanks for everyone having me today. And I know, based on the names on the screen, I know many of you, and if I don't know you, I look forward to meeting you and getting to know you and what you do and the companies you work for. Jen and Julia asked me to talk a little bit about some of the priorities I have for the agency this year and things we're working on. And so I came into this role working with Bruno Piggott, the prior commissioner. And one of the things he and I had both been hearing a lot of coming into towards the end of 2021 and coming into 2022 were issues with solid waste, particularly companies that are getting into the reuse and recycling businesses. One example is a company down in southern Indiana that takes utility poles that can no longer be used for whatever reason, and they either cut them down to make fence posts for farmers, or if they can't do that with the posts, they shred them and then they sell those shreds to landfills so trucks can drive on top of the landfills without getting all muddy or stuck. And came to our attention. Somehow this company came to our attention, and so we inspected and we found that they needed a permit. Well, that permit that you have to get is a solid waste processing permit, and it's a pretty large permit. It's a pretty expensive permit, and the company was kind of shocked that they had to get the same kind of permit that maybe a transfer station that deals with solid waste that would end up in a landfill has to get. And that kind of stuck with me. And so I started meeting internally with folks about how can we create some kind of regulatory scheme of some kind, whether it be a registration or notification or what have you, so that some of these activities don't have to get the same permit. There needs to be lower level of permitting. Well, fast forward, legislative session occurred, and many of you may already know, but House Bill 1226 passed and was signed by the governor, and it kind of shortcutted that whole discussion. You know, we are on record of being a little apprehensive about how the solid waste issue was handled in the bill. Mainly that there's we don't even know now that some of these places, who they are, where they're located, but it does get to the point that, you know, if you're using a product that is considered a solid waste, but you're going to be using it in a manufacturing process or any process of some kind to make another product, then it's not regulated anymore. And that's kind of where I was heading towards when I started meeting internally and then also meeting with external stakeholders, is how do we encourage the use and reuse of material so it does not end up in a landfill. Obviously, there are things that do need to end up in the landfill, and that's fine. But how do we encourage more reuse and not have the impediment of some large permit fee to stop people from doing what they should be doing? So that is solid waste. We are still consuming 1226 and what it means for our different programs. There was a number of things in that bill. And so we will be working to figure out where those lines are. You would think it'd be easy to determine whether something's in a process or not in a process, but I think we just want to make sure that we're meeting the bill's objective, and we're holding people to the way that the legislature wants them to be held to. Another issue that every state is dealing with, and I am certainly in the middle of, is environmental justice. It is a huge priority of the Biden administration. President Biden has the Justice 40 initiative, which focuses on environmental justice and blighted communities. And I don't think any state really, most states are in the same boat that Indiana's in, but every state would agree that environmental justice exists. And there are areas that have large amounts of contamination or treated maybe differently based on the industries that are located there. The question is that all of us have from a state perspective is, we recognize that. Now, what do we need to do? And EPA, what do you want us to do? Or what is good enough for us to do in your eyes? And that's been the tricky piece. I think EPA is trying to figure that out as they go, which makes it tough for states to be able to implement whatever it is that they want to implement, and continue moving the conversation forward. Indiana currently is in the midst of working on 2 particular permits in Northwest Indiana where EJ implications have been invoked. And so we're trying to work through that. My main concern is making sure we get permits done on time and in real time, but also work to address, community issues. And I don't know that that can be done on a permit by permit basis. That there's long-standing legacy pollution in areas around the state and in every state, and that needs to be dealt with in a comprehensive way, not just by an individual permit. And so that's hopefully how we can work through this. I am looking at more of an enforcement down an enforcement road rather than a permitting road, and we're waiting to hear how EPA feels about that. So more to come on environmental justice. A couple other things quickly. I typically on these kinds of events or calls, I try to be pretty brief so that because I really enjoy the talking with each of you and answering questions and having conversations. So a couple other things quickly is another issue I wanted to tackle coming into this role is that there are some communities in the state that have lead contamination issues. And if they somehow fell out of EPA oversight with the Superfund program, or they're not in our state cleanup or VRP program, these sites do exist and their contamination sitting there, it's not being handled. So I'm looking at ways with EPA to figure out how to address those sites creatively. There's a site here in Indianapolis. There's probably 1,000 homes. And it's typically $30,000 a home to clean up. That's $30 million. So I'm trying to figure out with EPA, where can I get that kind of money? Because I certainly don't have it to then use to clean up that area. I don't want, and this somewhat goes to the EJ topic as well. I don't want people living in areas of contamination. And if we can address that, we need to. So I am working with EPA. Justice 40 initiative may be a place where I can get some substantial amount of money to start those cleanup efforts. And then something I'm really proud of, and it's actually a governor's agenda item, is the IDEM and the Department of Homeland Security joined together and created a program to pay for the collection of PFAS firefighting foam. It's AFFF foam that firefighters use to put out fires. It contains tons of PFAS, and we'd really like it if they don't use that. And then there's already a law stating that they can't use it for training. And in speaking with the the state fire marshal, Joel Thacker, most fire agencies don't use it. It just sits in the back room, but they don't have the money to pay to get rid of it. In some cases, and in other cases, they don't want to spend the money to get the new foam when they may not have the space to put it because the old foam's still there. There is new green foam that does not contain PFAS material. So we are going to be rolling that out here in late April, early May, where the state contracted with a company. They're going to be collecting that from fire stations and then disposing of it properly. And like I believe a subpart D hazardous landfill. And it's a great thing. It's a great news story that we get to be a part of, and it's helping our firefighters and the communities in which they serve. So super excited and proud of that program. And then finally, in all of the speeches I've been giving recently, I focus on communication. How do we communicate with our stakeholders? Not just our stakeholders, but also the communities in which we serve. How can we provide better access to what we do, better understanding to what we do, and how can we come to issues where we may disagree and build bridges to figure out how we can get over that bridge together. And so I'm really hoping and that each of you, if you do have issues, you can come to us and share those issues with us so that we can work together to create solutions. As Jen went over my history of employment here at IDEM, and any legislative liaison for a state agency knows that the first duty of that person is to protect the agency on bills that are coming your way. And one of the big ways of doing that is finding compromise with legislators and whoever's pushing that agenda bill. So that's kind of the mentality that I bring to this role, is that we need to be more communicative, and we need to be able to explain what we do and how we do it in a way that everybody can understand. And that, I think, that's part of the reason we get into some of the troubling situations that the agency gets into. It's because we're not always able to explain what we do and why we do it. So with that, Jen or Julia or Jean, I'm happy to take questions or comments or
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah, let's do that. Does anyone have a question for the commissioner? Now's your
Jennifer-
opportunity. Yes,
Jennifer, this is Ben. I'll go ahead and
yes,
start.
sir.
Hey,
Okay,
nice to meet you, Brian. I'll see you in person. Hopefully you'll be at the Sites Conference at the middle of next month.
I will be.
Yeah. So I'll look forward to meeting you then. It's been brought up over the years in the IOA and then a little bit in our association as well. Does the state have any insight on innovative ways to increase the amount of wastewater operators, seeing that the average age of wastewater operators in the state of Indiana is probably getting close to 45-ish?
Yep.
And we're all getting to the age in the next 10 years we're going to retire, and we just don't see any youth involved in this.
Yeah, that is something that the prior commissioner Bruno was taking on, and I am working with our Office of Water Quality as well. One thing we and this is not the need for operators is going to exceed what we're able to do with this particular program I'm speaking about. But one thing we've done is we've teamed up with the Department of Corrections, and for low-level offenders, we teach them the trade of wastewater drinking water operation. And I think we had 2 or 3 successfully complete that program already. Which is, I mean, it serves 2 purposes. Obviously, we need more drinking water wastewater operators, but it also helps with the recidivism rate that many people that find themselves in prison or jail get into. And so being a part of that that's a really cool program that I'm proud to be a part of. But I'm also, and I've started talking with our Commissioner of Higher Education folks and our Department of Education folks, and many other agencies have as well, because they have different trade groups or whatever, like we do, wastewater drinking water operators, where we, trying to lean into that community college aspect or trade aspect of this could be an option for somebody that doesn't want to go to college, a traditional four-year college, and it's something we absolutely need. And it was also part of the, I think it was the Senate bill this year. I focused on wastewater and drinking water. I don't know the bill number. I didn't focus too much on it because it had more of an IURC theme to it than an IDEM theme. But it was a focus of that bill that we need to do more education outreach. We need to figure out how to solve the operator crisis that is occurring. So hopefully a combination of those things will help bring more people into the profession.
Well, no, I appreciate it. And I hope we're not the only state dealing with this, because I hold license in multiple states, and
Yep.
all states are dealing with this. And it's a shame because, the youth of America, there's some very, very smart individuals that really aren't set for college. They could be making very decent money. I mean, even a lot of the, the POTWs in the state of Indiana, they're struggling to find people as well, and try to train them and get them up to that plateau. And it's a great career if anybody wants
Yep.
to be able to do that. It's just getting out to the youth of America in Indiana to try to entice people to do it, because you're right, not everybody's set for college, and you see advertising for trade schools all over the commercials on TV that either be a diesel mechanic, and it's like, come on, there's got to be a better way of getting
Yeah.
people involved in our type of industry. So I
No, that's
appreciate
right.
it, and I'm glad that you guys are working on this.
Yeah, well, it's necessary, right? We
Yeah,
can,
no, I agree.
we can't do our job in making sure people have safe water or drinking water, and making sure that wastewater plants are meeting their limits without having operators there to do their job. So
Well, thank you very much.
yeah, it's super important.
Do we have any other questions?
Hi, Brian. This is Scott Rosino. I know
Hi, Scott.
last meeting we had two areas that were talked about. One of them was the coal slag issue, and then the other one was more around the regulations that came from the Senate bill on the wetlands. I didn't know if there were any updates in those two areas that you could talk
Sure.
about.
Sure. So on CCR, there was a bill 2 years ago, or 2 sessions ago. Sometimes I get my years and sessions mixed up. I usually judge my life on sessions, where like my wife's a teacher, she judges her years based on school years. The bill had IDEM taking on the federal program for permitting of CCR landfills. We're already doing the closure piece. There's the CCR landfill piece that we hadn't had yet. We are working towards a rulemaking on that. But even since then, EPA has kind of changed how they decided to interpret their CCR laws. And so they're going back to utilities and telling them that what they've done is not good enough, including utilities here in the state. And so we're working with those utilities to figure out ways to moderate that a little bit. On the wetland piece, that was a tough session for IDEM. It was, for me personally, that was super tough. I'm fine with anybody having a position on a bill that may be different from mine or different from the agencies. That's fine. It was the piece about beating up on the staff that really affected a lot of us here. that bill became law, and then in July, and then in August, a court decision in Arizona vacated the Trump WOTUS rule. So that bill had very little impact, will have very little impact at the end of the day. The different categories of wetlands, let me back up. The rule, when it was struck down, when the Trump rule was in, about 80% of Indiana's wetlands that we have left were considered isolated or Indiana wetlands. 20% were federal. Once that rule got struck, those numbers flipped. Now, about 80% is federal, 20% is state. We're back to the significant nexus and the Rapanos decision and Justice Kennedy's brief on how that rule, how those laws should be implemented. That's kind of how we're working in that world right now. And the EPA is working on a rule that will take over the gap of where the Trump rule was removed. Now, I don't think that they're going to make much change to. They're really looking for something that's defensible. You know, part of the issue, and I don't know about many of the other environmental laws, but the WOTUS thing is constantly in the air. States, the regulated folks, everybody is always wondering what is regulated, what is not regulated, because every time somebody comes out with a rule, it's challenged. So I have been hearing, whispers that EPA is really just going to reiterate Justice Kennedy's decision because they know that stands the test of time. It stands judicial scrutiny because the judiciary created it. So more to come on that as well. I am participating in the Wetlands Task Force, which has been really enlightening. I wish I would have known some of that information when that 389 bill came up. The last meeting we had talked about the science behind isolated wetlands and why nature set them out to be where they were. It was really fascinating. So by the end of the year, we'll have a report out from that task force as well. Good question, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. Any other questions?
Eric.
Yeah, Eric Foster.
Hello.
From RAM.
Thank you for being here today. Question, actually, you got a couple of them here, but I know IDEM takes pride in turning around permits in a quick fashion, especially on the water side where I'm most familiar. And I'm wondering if you could comment on any experience you've had so far with any delays from environmental justice programs or things like that where you anticipate it's going to take longer to get permits turned around?
So I haven't seen that on the water side yet, but certainly on the air and waste side. Those two communities I mentioned that are having EJ concerns. One is a RCRA permit and the other is an air permit. And so, part of the issue of not knowing what EPA wants or expects when responding to these things is going to draw out some of these permits for a while. Because we'll submit something. Michigan, good example is Michigan went through this. They went above and beyond. They even put things in the permit that they didn't really have the authority to put in the permit. And even after all of that, EPA still said not good enough. Well, then what is good enough? And that's what we're all trying to figure out. I'm actually going to. I'm a member of the Environmental Council of the States. It's 49, at least 49 of the 50 states participate. It's all the commissioners or directors of environmental agencies, and I'm going to Asheville, North Carolina on Monday. And the first topic we're talking about on Monday is environmental justice, and EPA is going to be on the stand, on the stage, and all 50 states get to start talking about, okay, this is not working. I even heard yesterday, Region 4 is doing different than Region 5. Region 4 is just telling their states, which is like Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, the southern states right there. They're just telling their states, you know, you just got to be more communicative. I'll do that all day long. That's not hard at all. We've been doing that for years. It's, you know, you have to do a health assessment. Well, what does that even mean? Do you understand? We don't have doctors on staff. I don't know how to do a health assessment. And if I do one, is that good enough? That's the kind of stuff we're trying to wade through. So long answer to say, yes, it can affect permits. We don't yet know how much that will happen, or to what extent, how long it will take those permits to get done. We have two situations going on right now, so we'll find out. You had some other questions though, I think.
Thanks. Well, yeah, and I'm not sure I can point to the exact ruling or anything, but I was curious if IDEM has started contemplating, or this deal that was, there was a ruling in Hawaii a year or two ago about groundwater migrating to a point source discharge, and they basically, I think up to that point, this entity had not had to have an NPDES discharge permit. And the ruling basically said, yeah, they need one because there was a clear path from this groundwater to NPDES or surface water. And I'm wondering, you know, I know at least in the past, you know, with stormwater ponds and things in northern Indiana, some of those don't have a clear point source discharge because they're basically detention ponds that seep into the ground. And I'm wondering how IDEM's thinking they may have to start permitting those.
That is a good question that I cannot answer. And I know this is being recorded, so Julia can't, because Julia is leaving me.
Yeah.
But Jen and Jean can help me, you know, talk with water to see what's going on there. Julia, you know, I can't let you off the hook that easy.
She's muted. We still didn't get you a t-shirt with.
I know, Brian, I'm sorry, but if you need me to work on that, I have 24 hours. I can get it done.
Yeah, right. No. Well, that's a good question though. So, you know, members of Team IDEM on this call, we can look into that and follow up.
Yeah, to my knowledge, there really hasn't been an instance where IDEM has implemented anything along those lines. I'm just wondering if there's any.
Yeah, I don't think we have.
In the works.
I don't think we have, but I do remember that coming up. Just as an FYI, hey, this happened. But outside of that, I don't remember anything else about it.
Okay. All right. One quick other question. I know, and I should know this, but is IDEM, have they moved forward with increasing fees for permitting? I know they have for air, but have they done that for the water side as well? Yes,
land and water permit fees were adopted last board meeting, which was in February, I think. They will be effective July 1.
Okay.
I think July 1.
All right. Thank you.
And if you want, they folks on the call can get you, you know, the documentation of what was passed.
Okay. All right. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
I did forget to mention, obviously, like Eric brought up, our permit metric, and our goal is to be 75% of the statutory time, meaning we get, if our days are 100, we get it done in 75 days. That's kind of the goal. For permitting right now, we're getting permits done in 54%. So same analogy, 100 days is our statutory goal. We're getting it done in 54 on average across the agency. And then our other big one is the compliance metric. Bruno wanted a goal of 7 days. This was 2 years ago. Our midterm goal was 15. And we crushed both those goals. We've been averaging anywhere between 3.5 to 4 days from the time we step onto your property to inspect to the time you get an inspection report, which really proud of the agency to get to that point. It's really good for everybody, especially people that we're inspecting. They need to know what's going on so they can address any issues quickly rather than sit there for 45 days. So forgot to bring that up earlier. So
Thanks.
Hey, Brian, this is Ben again.
Yeah.
Hey, I just wanted to make one comment on the fees and on the permit renewals and new permits. The state of Indiana, because you know I deal with several states. The state of Indiana, I know you raised the rates, but it's still much lower than rates in any other state. So there shouldn't be any complaints about people paying a little bit more than they were, in my opinion. And there's one wastewater permit that I've already started working on that does not expire until the end of May 2023. And I'll be submitting that within the next probably 15 to 30 days. And I'll be lucky if I get the permit by the end of May 2023 from one of the other states. They typically take
gotcha.
anywhere from 300 to 400 days to get your permits back.
yeah, no, that's not. I would. I'd be knocking. Those that know Paul Higginbotham, I'd be knocking on his door rather loudly.
Yeah,
if it
so
took us
you guys do a phenomenal
days.
job on getting the permits turned around and back to industry. You know, I've written many of them for the state of Indiana, and you guys do a great job on that. And you're right, on annual inspections. You know, normally by the end of the day, you get your inspection results back from the inspector. You don't wait 10 days, 15 days. You have it by the end of the closing day. So they're doing a great job on that as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Alan, did you have a question?
Nice to see you again yesterday, Alan.
Yeah, good to see you, Brian. No, I'm just having weird things with my computer with the sound, and it's unmuting me, but I don't have a question for you. But I appreciate another opportunity to hear from you, Brian.
Hopefully it changed a little bit from yesterday.
All right. Anyone else have a question? Now's our opportunity, and this is a rare opportunity, so we don't always get Brian here. So, any other questions?
If other questions come up, you think about them later. You know, the item folks on this call know very well how to get a hold of me, and I'm happy to answer or meet with any of you and go over whatever questions you have.
Absolutely. Okay. I don't see any further questions. We appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and you should have seen in the chat a couple different times the evaluation link. And if you'll do us a favor, like I said earlier, it really helps us to know what your thoughts are about these meetings. If you have any suggestions for improvement or topics that you would like to see in future meetings or at the conference, or if you have a location that you would like to offer for us to visit and you would like to host at one of the future meetings, we are happy to have you host us. So And we will hold your hand throughout the whole thing. So never fear, we are here. All right. Anything else anyone wants to say, Ben? Jean?
Well, I do. Before we close our meeting, I did get a basically an attendance list from Gene. I've went through the the people online and from the email list and just randomly picked guys. There's no rhyme or reason to why I do this. And when we did it a couple years ago when we had a Zoom, it just kept popping out people all over the place when we had a meeting, our annual conference. But Nathan Wilkerson, Nathan, I see that you're on here. We would like to award you with a $50 Amazon gift card. So thank you very much for being part of the quarterly meeting, and look to see you at live meetings in the future. So Nathan, or I hope the email address that Gene has put on this is correct. I'll go ahead and send you an email so you can reply back to me before we'll get started on the gift card. Okay?
I do have one additional thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Before we leave. Monday is the nomination deadline for the Governor's Award program for this year. So if you are someone who likes to get recognition for the projects that you've been doing at your facilities, please do submit a nomination. We have information online about that. There's a narrative guide that will walk you through for each category. We do have 2 categories that specifically apply to this group are the pollution prevention category and the continuous improvement category. We also have recycling, education, and many others, government, greening the government, energy, renewables. So if you have not been aware of that, or for some reason this year it fell off your radar to nominate yourself or someone else, please do check that out. I can put that in the link here shortly. Let me see if I can grab it here for you. But I just wanted to throw that out there. We have received a few, but the competition is kind of slim right now. So maybe, put your name in the hat and win a Governor's Award. So please do so. Let me put a link in here for you. If there's any questions, feel free to reach out to us about that. Kristen Davis is the coordinator of that this year. Cameron Machino has moved on to NDOT, and so Kristen took over for us. And if you have any questions, she's happy to answer those questions for you. Or you can call me or Jean directly about that as well.
Well, I want to thank everybody for their time for the quarterly meeting, and hope it was beneficial, and look forward to finding a host for June, and hopefully we can see everybody in person. So Jean, Jennifer, thank you very much for all your help with this. And Julia, we hope best wishes, and look forward to seeing you in the future. Other than that, everyone, you have a wonderful day, and have a wonderful week, and look forward to seeing everybody in June. So thank you very much. Jean, you got
Thank you.
anything?
The governor's.
No, I popped up, didn't I? Hey, hello, everybody. I guess I just want to thank everyone that's on here that has already sent in their annual performance report if they're an ESP and/or /partners member, and to take note that it is due, obviously, April 1st, which is tomorrow, and that the partners only APR is due on June 1st, and I'll be sending an email out to folks with that. And for everyone, information pertaining to the new recognition awards, look that stuff over, because this is new for us, and thanks to the partners. the executive committee is awesome, and they're doing all kinds of wonderful things to try and help you guys succeed. So take care, everyone. Thanks.
Well, have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.